Sexual Assault Awareness Month. I have two wonderful, dedicated, and caring women with me today, Tina Robinson and Cheryl Wilson from Contact Lifeline. And get your pads and pencils back out again, because we're going to continue our discussion talking. I asked before the commercial break, I asked what can women do to prevent getting sexually assaulted, and fortunately Tina's always here to correct me, God bless her, so she's going to redirect or rephrase my question and then give us the correct information.
Certainly. What we call it is risk reduction, what things can be done to reduce sexual violence, because sexual violence is about power and control, and usually there's an unequal balance of power and control. So if somebody may be bigger or physically stronger, you may not be able to prevent it, but there are some things you might be able to do to reduce your risk. And we know anytime alcohol plays a role, comes into a person's system, that it tends to make them do things differently, and quite frankly it makes them much more vulnerable to being raped. And rapists look for people who are vulnerable, and so drinking of alcohol and using drugs tend to make people do things and go places and say things that they wouldn't ordinarily do, and under the influence of alcohol it makes them much more vulnerable for someone to perpetrate rape on them.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so not doing the alcohol, being in a safe place, going with friends. If you're a woman by yourself, when you go to your car, have your keys ready, lock your doors, okay? And those are things that you can do that are risk reduction. As a society, in order to prevent rape, we have to change some social norms that contribute to rape in our society. And that is overwhelmingly a lot of messages that we give to young men about what it is to be a man.
Absolutely. Okay, Cheryl, you want to weigh in on that?
I do. Something that I see often with my clients, especially with young women, probably between the ages of maybe 16 and 25, when the date rape drug is involved. I think young people have to be very cautious because oftentimes rape occurs when the drug is slipped in unknowingly, and it makes the victim obviously very vulnerable. And the difficulty is they remember parts of what happened, but not all of it, and that causes an added psychological trauma.
And I'm going to add something to that. Most people don't like to tell their age, but I'll just say that I at least have my AARP card already. And I want to also caution mature women, because we don't get old, okay, we just get seasoned and mature, but I also want to caution mature women about this very thing. Anytime that you go out in public, and even if you don't have an alcoholic drink, you should not, if you're with someone you're meeting for the very first time or you're just getting to know them, do not leave any beverage unattended, because you don't know what, a person can slip into it. So it doesn't mean that you're sitting there drinking wine. You could be drinking a Coca-Cola and someone could slip. So, let me go to the bathroom and powder my nose, okay? So everyone needs to be, particularly careful about that. And some of us, think we know a person, and then sometimes we don't really know a person. So you just need to be careful all around with that particular situation.
Absolutely.
One thing I just wanted to add, acquaintance rape is actually statistically a lot higher than rape by someone that's unknown. So that just adds to the point that you just made, Allison.
That was worth repeating.
I was just commenting that acquaintance rape is far more common than rape by someone that is unknown. So back to your point that you could be with someone that you don't know quite well, but that you still have to be cautious when leaving a drink unattended.
Absolutely. Okay. Is there anything else that you want to suggest that we can do? Let's do a quick review of the reduction. One, you don't want to be intoxicated, especially when you're with someone that you really don't know very well, or you know a little bit. Two, if you know you're going out in the evening, make sure you have your car keys with you, so that most of us nowadays have a remote to open the car, but have that ready. Actually, you can use your key as a weapon if you hold it in a certain way. So we have don't drink, make sure your keys are ready. What was the other?
Lock your doors when you're answering. Get people, if you're having servicemen coming to your home, make sure you ask them for identification for the place that they're coming from. Don't let strangers in your home.
Right, look through the peephole.
Look through the peephole, use it. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good. Okay. Let's move on to populations that are most vulnerable. Is there any of us who may be more at risk than others?
Yes, being born a woman makes you vulnerable in this culture. We have, like I said, a rape-supported culture, and also young young victims, young men, mostly molested or assaulted between the ages of 2 and 6. Young women, when they start dating, ages 16 to 25 are the higher risk populations. And any disabled person, they are usually 7 times more vulnerable to being sexually assaulted because of their disability, especially if it's a cognitive one where they can't think and do for themselves. People can take advantage of them and sexually harm them.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because some of you may be looking at the show and say, well, I thought your show is about sexual health. And one of the connections that I want to make with this show is that very often when something like this happens to a person, especially a young person, if they don't get the counseling that is available and that they need, it has all kinds of ramifications. I read a statistic that said women who have been sexually abused are 7 times more likely to put themselves at risk for getting HIV. So the self-esteem changes when you're violated like that, and that can put you in risk. And I even remember Oprah saying when she was 12 she was molested, and as a result she thought sex and love were the same thing and went out as a very, very young person having sex with a lot of people. So, I mean, we're not just talking one incident, but an incident that could happen and have a lot of ramifications throughout the course of a person's life.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then what should a person do? I mean, what are some of the first things they should do if this unfortunate thing happens to them?
You first want to make sure the person's safe. Next, you want to make sure they get medical help. In Newcastle County, you would want them to go to Christiana Hospital, where there is what's called a forensic nurse, and we call it a SANE program. These are nurses specifically trained to take forensic evidence off of a body in the event that the person would want to prosecute their assailant. You want to listen to the person, believe the person. You do not want to force them to try and do anything that they don't want to do. You want to help them regain control, because rape overwhelmingly is the loss of control over your body. So helping them make small decisions like, do you want something to eat? Where do you want to go? But you want to believe the victim. You want to support them by listening. And the last thing, please do not ever retaliate and do more violence in this situation. A lot of men who have female friends who are raped, and if we say the statistic is overwhelming, it's someone you know, then chances are they're going to know this person. And instead of going out and retaliating, make sure you turn that person over to the police, because unfortunately the way you prosecute someone in a sexual assault case is it's more likely that the person doing the assaulting of the assailant will be locked up before the rapist would be.
Okay. I want to go back to one thing you said, because I just recently was talking to a colleague yesterday, and it was about a celebrity, and I said, oh, I didn't know that. But you said believe the person, and that's very important, because just recently Monique went on public television and talked about the fact that she was molested, and it turns out she was molested by her brother. And when she told her family about this, they didn't believe her.
Yes.
You know, and so that is very, very important. If someone says it, it's better to believe it than not believe it. That way you can start getting the support and the help. And if it's not true, then you can deal with that down the road. But if it is true, and probably 8 out of 10 times it is true, the person is getting the support and the help that they need.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Do you want to add anything, Cheryl, to
I just wanted
to the counselor? I mean, I can't even imagine how you have to carry all of this, these stories and stuff around with you, when you hear these personal stories.
Well, each story is very different. Each victim is very different. But one of the things that we try to do in counseling at Contact Lifeline is really try to empower the women, as Tina said, to make decisions for themselves, and start to to feel a sense of control in their lives. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that victims have to overcome, and also overcoming the shame and the guilt that's involved. And the only way to really do that is through counseling and with talking to a trained professional to help them sort of put their situation in a new perspective,
right,
to help them to move on with their daily life.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank both of you ladies for enlightening all of us. I learned something new. You have a website that people can go to access services. You operate 24/7. And again, I can't say it enough. If you have been sexually assaulted and you've never gotten counseling, you still have that opportunity to do that, whether it was 5 days ago, 5 years ago, 25 years ago. You still have the option to get support if you need it. And don't suffer in silence, and don't suffer alone. I know how it can be embarrassing and shameful to want to talk to someone about this, but you'll be much healthier in talking about it than to keep it all bottled up and stuffing it down. So ladies, thank you so very much. I want to thank your agency for providing us with this wonderful display. And you had another pair of shoes over there I want to quickly read. What does that say?
These are a pair of shoes from